Welcome, everybody, to Creating a Family. Talk about foster, adoptive, and kinship care. Welcome back to the people who have been with us for a long time, and you are legion. We love you, and especially welcome to the newbies. We love having new people join us, so welcome. I'm Dawn Davenport. I am the host of this show and the director of the nonprofit creatingafamily.org. And I'm also joined today by Tracy Whitney, and there's a reason that Tracy is joining me today. I am retiring. Some of you may have heard that, but for those of you who haven't, I am retiring after almost 18 years here at Creating a Family. It is bittersweet because I absolutely love creating a family. I love what I do, but I especially love hosting this podcast. On the other hand, I am so excited about the future for both Creating a Family as well as the podcast, and I'm especially thankful that Tracy Whitney is going to become the new host of this podcast. She has been with Creating a Family for 9 years. She is in many ways the heart and soul of Creating a Family. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Tracy.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Thank you for the kind words. I'm really excited about stepping into this new role, and I'd love to tell our listeners a little bit about myself. I am a mom by both birth and adoption, and I recently added the title Mimi to now 2 precious little grandsons. And I've been a user of Creating a Family's resources since 2007 when we were waiting for our first adoption, and I came on board as a staff person in 2016. So as a content manager, I write all the weekly articles that people read on our website. I create tip sheets and other content for our online learning education programs. And for some of you who are active in our online Facebook group, you might know me from there because I'm also one of the admins over there. And if you don't know about our Facebook group, you can join us at www.facebook.com/groups/creatingafamily, and we hope to see you over there. So I'm going to jump right into things now. We're very excited to talk with Dr. Ken Ginsberg today about building secure relationships with our kids that last into adulthood. Dr. Ginsberg practices adolescent medicine at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and is a professor of pediatrics at UPenn's Perlman School of Medicine. He's also the founder of the Center for Parent and Teen Communication. It's a resource that I use very frequently while I'm raising my last 2 teenagers. Welcome, Dr. Ginsberg, and let's jump right into it so we can talk about this thing that you call Lighthouse Parenting and what also could be referred to as balanced parenting. I wonder if you could start us with just that elemental definition of lighthouse parenting.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's a particular honor to be on this show during this momentous announcement and to be part of your family. So the idea behind lighthouse parenting is about striking that balance. The metaphor itself, right? So there's a ginormous amount of research that actually says that when we balance 2 forces, the loving and warmth and flexibility that we need to have towards our children with the need to protect them and set rules and boundaries, that when we set that balance, families are stronger, relationships are stronger. There are so many good things that happen. That is called balanced parenting. There's not just science. There's like millennia of common sense and experience, right? If you asked your great grandma, hey, what works? She would have said, kids need to know they're loved and that you care about them and you got to set rules. But when you set rules, they got to know it's not because you're trying to control them. It's because you love them. That's it.
Right.
So what is lighthouse parenting? Lighthouse parenting is about how to do this. It is balanced parenting, but it's the applied model. And the metaphor itself, I think, begins to tell you what it is we're trying to achieve. And I even wrote, I don't know if you call it a poem, but a few lines to explain this balance. May I say it out loud?
Absolutely.
And then I think you'll really kind of get this metaphor. So the first thing is, I choose to be a lighthouse parent. In other words, it's intentional. It's something I'm really thinking about. A stable force on the shoreline from which my child can measure themselves against. I'll send my signals in a way they can choose to trust. I'll look down at the rocks to make sure they don't crash against them. I'll look into the waves and trust that they're going to learn to ride them, but I'm committed to prepare them to do so. I'll remain a source of light they can seek whenever they need a safe and secure return. Balance between protection, between trust, between preparing and protecting.
That's beautiful. I love
Yeah,
that.
I do too.
What then do you perceive to be the benefits of Lighthouse Parenting for the parents or the caregivers?
So there are a lot of benefits, and it's hard for me to separate the benefits between what young people experience and what parents experience, because parents care about what young people experience. So I don't know how to separate that, but I'll tell you what we know. We know that families that apply balanced parenting are more likely to raise young people who are academically and socially successful, who have fewer emotional problems and more emotional health, fewer behavioral risks, right? In so many different categories. We know that. And that matters to families. But I'll tell you what else matters to families. What matters to families is that they also have the closest relationships. They have the most communicative relationships. They talk. Parents know what is going on in their children's lives. And I believe, so now this is an I believe statement. I believe that the reason we know that they have more enduring relationships is because when we prepare children and guide children rather than control children, they want us in their lives for a really long time, maybe forever. And when we are overly controlling, like, all of those parenting styles named after like farm implements, right? Or things that fly, right? When we control kids, they want to get away from us. And when we don't engage enough with kids, then they're like, why bother staying engaged? But when we guide, because we love and because we're committed to protection, who doesn't want that in their life when I'm 63. I miss my mom. I wish I could still call her for this same kind of support I always got.
Mm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you too. Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that would be helpful is if you could talk to us about, in the book, you talk about the 7 key elements that really, your poem outlined them in a lyrical way, but could you talk to us about the elements specifically? And we could just start with the first one, stability. What do you mean by that? And how do we parents do that?
First of all, thanks for giving me the word lyrical, because I've been looking for that word. I'm saying it's not a poem, but that's the word I'm going to use from now on. That's what it is. So, one of the things that I'm actually super duper proud of is that when most people write books or an article or anything about parenting, you say, do this, not that, do this, not that. And then you end with, oh, yeah, and take care of yourself, right? That's always the ending. It's always the afterthought. And in the case of Lighthouse Parenting, it's the first thought. It's the first thought, to be a stable force on the shoreline. You can't be stable if the ground isn't solid under your own feet. When we take care of ourselves and we are a force that is, emotionally healthy and doing the work to do it, right? You don't just be emotionally healthy. It takes the work. But when we are that kind of a stable force, we are demonstrating bandwidth. We are demonstrating to our children, I can be available to you. My plate might look full, but there's always room for you because I have ways of creating room when you need me more. So I begin there. And stability also, besides being mentally and emotionally healthy and having the bandwidth to manage stress in healthy ways, besides that, it also implies that we're role models all the time from which our children can measure themselves against. But now let's go to the end, because I've bookended the concept of parental stability. When we talk about, I'll remain a source of light that they can seek whenever they need a safe and secure return, that's about restoring relationships, maintaining relationships, about knowing who a child always is. But it also says, I am never running out of room for you. I will be here when you need me. When you're 60 and I'm 95, I'll be here, right? And so we both begin and end with the power of stability. And let me make one other point, because modern parenting has been so child focused, as it should. I'm not against that. I am a pediatrician, right? But it's been so child focused that parents feel almost selfish for investing in themselves. And the line I always use is self-care, taking care of yourself, is not a selfish act. It is a strategic act of good parenting.
Amen.
You're speaking our language.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah, I do feel like we have, no one wants to say that we shouldn't be child focused. On the other hand, it feels like we have swung way in the direction of becoming exclusively child focused, and that cannot be healthy.
Yeah.
I emphatically agree. And it also drives anxiety. Can we be honest on? It drives anxiety. When,
amen.
when
Yes.
you look at Tommy coming down the sliding board and you're like, look at you, Tommy, you're so brave and so smart and so wise and so handsome. Look at you, you're doing it, without telling Tommy gravity is helping you, right? Then Tommy learns two things. He learns that you're paying attention, and that's terrific. But he also learns that he's always on display, and that drives anxiety. I want our kids to know how much we love them. Again, I'm a pediatrician. My whole life is kids, right? I want them to know how much they're loved and how much we're paying attention, but I don't want them to feel like they are objects of display and their purpose for existence is to please us.
Right.
And it drives anxiety for parents as well.
Yes. I was just going to say the same thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Tracy.
It drives the anxiety of, am I doing enough? Am I doing it
Exactly.
right? What do they need? Do they need more? Do they need less? It's fraught.
Yeah, and everything we read on on social media or the articles we're reading tells us that we're not doing enough, that we have to constantly be involved with our children, and much less sit down and have a cup of tea, at the end of a day. Heavens no, we've got to be, playing Legos or whatever.
So if you're struggling with that, remember this voice. I want to be there when my child needs me the most.
Mm-hmm.
For me to be there when my child needs me the most, they have to be willing to come to me and not feel like they always need to spare me. What we don't want is children who are afraid of falling down and getting back up, who are uncomfortable with the realities of life, who are overly anxious. We want them to come to us. And they're going to come to us when they don't live in constant fear of disappointing us, right? That's what it means to be a stable force from which they can measure themselves against. That's what it means to look down at the rocks. You're going to protect them, but you also trust that they're going to learn to ride them, right? So again, my book, which just came out, right? It's all about the details of how to do this, right? And in the beginning and in the end, and hopefully as many times in the middle as I could, I say things like, I don't know your family. I can't tell you exactly what to do or say, but I can tell you how to think and how to make things work for your family by achieving this beautiful balance.
Mm-hmm. Let me pause here for a moment to ask a favor of you. We need your ratings. We have just thrilled to find out that we are now ranked as the number 11 on the top 100 parenting podcast. But when I went back and looked at the other parenting podcasts, the podcasts that were ranked, we did not have as many rankings, and that is a problem. We really would appreciate, we will take a star ranking, we will take a review. We're not picky, we would just really appreciate it. If you're on Spotify, you just select the highlighted rating on the podcast page, and it pops up and gives you star ratings. To leave a comment, which we also read all of our comments and would love to get comments too, or a review, it's below the show notes. So go to the show notes and there's a link for you to leave a comment or a review. On Apple, to leave a rating and a review, you go to the Creating a Family podcast page. where you're going to see a list of the episodes. That's where you find all of our episodes, which, by the way, go through our episodes and listen to some of the past ones. There's some real treasures in there. Anyway, you scroll to the bottom of the page for the review, and you can tap the stars that are just right there to leave a rating, and then you scroll below to click on Write a Review. And if you're listening on YouTube, you can give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. You can also subscribe to our channel, which we would really like for you to do. So thank you. And now back to this great interview.
So that bringing up your book is a great segue to let's talk about all 7 of the elements and just a little bit of explanation of each, kind of whet the appetite for people to get a hold of that book. So we did stability. Don talked about stability. Let's talk about modeling and knowing.
Yeah. So modeling is about recognizing that children are always imagining what it means to be an adult. And if you don't believe me, put 2 3-year-olds in a room with a lot of makeup clothes and see how much they try to imagine what it means to be an adult. Yep. So they are always watching us. We are role models 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's a reality. That actually shouldn't put pressure on you. It should take pressure off of you, because real role models are imperfect, right? Real role models struggle to be human. We are not always those ducks that glide smoothly on the water. We're the ducks that are on the top, flapping like crazy to stay afloat. And when we role model how we do that, being real humans, that's the way to raise a human, right? So this is pressure off, not pressure on. It is pressure, again, to take care of yourself. You're going to mess up because you're alive, right? And it's how you recover that is a big part of role modeling. So there's that. And then there's knowing. You have to know who your child is. All of your power, actually, throughout life is knowing who your child really is. That's what makes you different than every other person along their journey, right? They're going to be going through adolescence, and in adolescence, they're going to be trying on a lot of different hats. They're going to try on different hats to fit in here, to fit in there, right? Then they're going to go to the work world where they're going to try on hats. All of this, like experimenting with our identity. And the most protective force in the world is to know that you're worthy of being loved, right? That's where you're going to carry through when you're 90. When you're 90 and you're sitting around with your friends, you either feel like you're worthy of being loved or you're always fearing being rejected. Right. What makes you know you're worthy of being loved? It's that the person who knows you the best, everything that's amazing and the things that could use some improvement, right? That the person who knows you the best chooses to love you. So that's part of what knowing means. And I'm going to give one other point. How do you know your child? By creating the kind of relationship where they don't fear showing you who they are, right? So they're not worried about always being judged. They don't fear being rejected, because that love is unconditional. It's very different than liking. Liking is about conditions. You like what your kid does, you don't like what a kid does, but you never stop loving them because you know them in their totality and think they're amazing. The most protective force in a life.
So that leads really well into communicating and how we say all that and do all that with our kids.
Yeah. Except, Tracy, it's not about saying as much as it is about listening, right?
Yeah.
And so communication is about someone feeling safe coming to you. And someone feels safe coming to you when you listen first to what they already know, what they already think, what they already value, what they care about, and what their current plans are. Then that's being a sounding board, right? And you're doing that without judgment. Again, judgment of who they are as a person. You're allowed to not like a behavior. You're allowed to guide them, right? Yep. But you understand that they are the expert in their own life, even if they're 4 years old. Take a breath, because parents hear that and they're like, what is he saying? Thinking that someone is the expert in their own life doesn't mean they know more than you. Right. Doesn't mean they have better ideas than you. Doesn't mean they have wisdom more than you. It means that you trust that only they understand their journey. And when I, as a doctor, when a counselor, a teacher, or a parent gives advice without understanding the reality that the child has to navigate, it's going to fall flat, right? But when we partner with our kids, where we got the wisdom, we got the experience, but they know, I'm going to use that metaphor, the waves they have to ride,
Right.
then we can come up with a plan that works for them. And all of that is about not only knowing, but communicating, how we communicate, right? We help them think things through. We help them develop their values, right? We help them plan, but we don't say or do for them.
Right. Yeah, that weakens them. And it weakens our relationship with them long term too.
Simplest metaphor, I used to teach nursery school. If you have a 4-year-old and you say, let me do that for you, darling, what are you actually communicating?
Helplessness.
Yeah. You're saying, I don't think you can do it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
When you say, tell me what you can do, show me. How can I support you? Then you get them to stretch into new territory, which is your goal as a parent.
How about protecting? Talk to us a little bit about protecting.
Yeah. Let me be clear. I have 2 daughters. Those are their legs and when they were little. And if I could bubble wrap them, right, and really create, like if someone came to me, an angel came down and said, check this box and your kids will never have pain. They'll know nothing but pleasure. I would check the box. I would.
Yep.
Right.
So would I.
Right. Who wouldn't?
Yep.
But actually, that's not an option. It's actually not an option. What is an option is to understand that moving into the next point, that preparation is protection, preparing them for the real world. But you want to set boundaries first, right? So let's do, like, we're not going to let them crash against the rocks. Don't be scared of what, Ken is about to tell you, because there are guardrails, right? There's bumpers, right? There's boundaries. You didn't let your kid put their hand on the stove, and he did whatever it took, including swatting their hand, if that's the only thing that could prevent them from touching. You didn't let them run into the road, even if you were inappropriate and screaming, or tackle them. And you're not going to let your 16-year-old get in a car with someone who's drinking. You're not. So there's these guardrails that are absolutely there, where we do nothing but demand. We basically say, these are never rules. You will not do it. And when we demand, we do it in a framing that they can understand and listen to. If you say to a young person, no, they say, why not? If you say to a person, no, they feel controlled. That is the kiss of death of a relationship between adolescents and adults. If they feel controlled, they will rebel. When they feel cared about, they are grateful.
Yeah.
So when we set these very clear guardrails, we make them minimal, like they're about safety or about really heavy moral issues, right? We are very, very clear. And then we frame it, because I love you, because I care about you. It's all you have to say, because kids are desperate to hear that and to be protected, by the way. Let me say one other thing. I'm sorry. When we set these guardrails, it is actually not restrictive, because within the guardrails, there's so much play. There's so much room to mess up and experiment. When we don't set the guardrails, then kids have to set them themselves. And they're like, how far can I go? I don't know if I feel safe. I'm scared. But if you're like, I know my mom's keeping me safe. I know my dad would never let me into dangerous territory. So I have a lot of room in the middle. That actually gives them more freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've already touched on the 6th step, and that is preparation, because that's part of as you pointed it out, that's part of, actually I skipped the 5th step, I just realized that. But let me hit preparation that right now, because it's part of protecting. As you mentioned, that part of protecting, you're not going to always be around to protect them. So what we have to do as parents is prepare them.
Yeah.
You want to prepare them, Don, while they're under your watchful eye. You want to let them fall down and learn how to recover while they're under your watchful eye. If you do, those words, they're not really parenting styles, they're just words like helicopter, snowplow, all that stuff. Those are words. If you overprotect, your child will mess up. They will fail, but they're going to fail in their 20s when you're not watching, when the consequences are far, far more serious, right?
Mhm.
So we want to allow them to fail and recover, but we also want to prepare them with the skill sets to navigate the real world, right? So the real world is full of people trying to manipulate you and take advantage of you. It is full of social media, which is sometimes incredibly beautiful and sometimes filled with hate and misinformation. And you have to know this. And because if you don't know this, you are not prepared to navigate a difficult world. And we want to teach them while we can still be watching them. We want them to make mistakes while we can watch them, because then we teach them how to recover. And again, the good news is this: you're going to be making a lot of mistakes while they're growing up too. So this is not always about sitting down at the end of the day and say, how'd you screw up, kid? Right? A lot of it is really, again, modeling how you are floating on top of the water. What are your little feet doing in the paddle?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the best preparation in many ways, is showing our kids that we don't have, it's not that we have it all figured out, but that we're willing to, going with your metaphor, wade in and continue to paddle. And that leads us to the fifth one that I forgot. Sorry, because it's actually one of my favorites, so it's surprising that I forgot it. And that is resilience. It's almost become a buzzword now.
Yeah.
And I hate that it's become, a buzzword, because that seems to diminish it. But I think if you were to ask anyone of us, any parent, what we really want is our kids to be able to, fail and get up, to recover from the blows that we all know that life's gonna throw at them, and continue to thrive. So how do we as parents up the odds that our kids will be, yes, the overused word, resilient?
Yeah. So, the lyrical part of that statement is, I'll look into the waves and trust that they're going to learn to ride them, which is more
Yes.
than just resilience. It's about thriving, right? And let's talk about the word resilience. So, as a person who wrote one of the earlier books on resilience in 2006, now in its fourth edition, right? Building Resilience in Children and Teens, I love the word. But
Yeah.
it's not just that it's overused, it's that it was overused in ways that in some way became offensive. Let's put this out there. If you don't mind, I'm just going to put it out there.
No, please.
Sometimes people are not given enough resources, they suffer. Systems are not designed to support them adequately. And then what we say is, well, gosh, you're suffering, but at least you're going to be resilient. So it's been given almost as a runner-up prize. So we have to be clear. Our goal is for every single human being to have the internal and external resources, meaning who they know they are, and enough opportunities to thrive in the world that they will succeed. That is our goal. With that said, there are so many different ways to help a person become resilient. And there are many that are given on parentandteen.com from the Center on Parent and Teen Communication. There's many in my books to draw from. But to make it super duper simple, stress is not a bad thing. Stress is part of being alive. And part of what has created anxiety for this generation is this feeling like we have to feel good all the time. That's not what living is, right? Life throws you curveballs. And what makes you happy is not being curveball free, because it's not an option. What makes you happy is having a sense of meaning and purpose in the world, and knowing that you belong to each other, that we belong to each other, that we're connected to each other, that during difficult times we can draw strength from one another. But there's more. Having emotions is a strength. We don't want people to be numb or to be flat. We don't want people to be stress-free because it's not possible. What makes the difference in whether you are healthy or not, mentally and physically, is how you cope with stress, right? Stress is
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah,
Mic drop.
absolutely.
Stress is happening, right? The question is, how do you deal with it? Are you turning to the easy, quick fixes like alcohol and drugs, like cutting, like all the things we fear in adolescence? Are we, or and adulthood for that matter, are we turning to the easy, quick fixes, in which case stress is a serious problem because it's going to drive you down? Or are we turning to those things that are healthy, human connection, and all the different ways that we know to cope, which I have 100 pages on, and I could go over as much as you want now, but do we have healthy ways to cope when life becomes inevitably difficult? And if we do, then we will be healthy and we will be resilient. And at least the two I want to mention is drawing nearer to other people when life gets tougher, and knowing that you matter, right? Like if times are tough, but you have a purpose and you stick to that purpose, you can get through most things.
And I would add to that also a third thing is the fact that stress can drive us to repair. And when there is a break in relationship or when there is unhealthy ways of managing that stress, the stress that we feel as parents when we see our kids handling stress badly can prompt that need to go back and say, let's remediate that. Let's work that out between us. Let's help you learn new strategies for the next time.
Amen. Amen. And if you go back 2 sentences to what you said, let's like repair our relationship.
Yep.
Because when life gets tough, what we do is we remind ourselves what matters the most, and it's our connection. And we can grow and we can be stronger when we recover from challenges, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're giving me goosebumps. I just want you to know, and I mean that literally. So I probably need to be hearing some of this.
Yeah.
I'm definitely speaking the truth. If you're getting goosebumps, it's not just that you're moved, but sometimes when you just hear what's real and what's obvious and what you already know, Dawn, you know this in your heart of hearts. And this is really the last element, which remember who I am. I'm a pediatrician. I used to teach nursery school, right? But I also work with the young people who've had the hardest lives you can imagine, right? Most of my clinical work is at Covenant House with young people who are experiencing homelessness, whose families have gone beyond repair in many cases, right?
We work with those same kids, exactly, not homeless or families beyond who are struggling significantly. Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's most of my clinical work. I think that's part of the reason that we're so connected here, right? So really, the work is in helping families that are struggling know that there never needs to be a break. Life is challenging. Life is challenging. And how we get through it, it defines our strength and our resolve. And what we have to help our children know is that I may not like what you are doing, but I will never stop loving you. And I will hold as a beacon who I know you really are. What could be more protected, right? Let's keep going with the metaphor. You're out in the waves, life is hard as heck, and all these people are calling you a failure in this way or that way. But your parent or the person who raised you, in whatever context family looks like, knows you, saw you, right? I mean, I take care of, when I work with youth experiencing homelessness, many of them have been through foster care, resource families, kinship care. And for those of you who are listening who might say, but I only have a small dip into their life, I may have them for a year, for 6 months. I will tell you, I work with these young people, and your love for them, your regard for them, you're allowing them to be seen and heard remains a protective force always. Things may not be smooth, but they're better off because they have these memories of these people in their life who actually saw them.
And now
Yeah.
I've got goosebumps.
Yeah. No,
That's
you
fantastic.
are spot on, and we see that all the time. And foster families sometimes feel that way, where they'll think, I'm short term. Adoptive families often feel like, especially, I mean, adoption and fostering covers a full range of experiences, but in kids, but often feel like they're not enough. Dr. Ginsburg, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, partly because we at Creating a Family have been a part of stressing the attachment parenting, trauma-informed parenting. That has been the heart of what we do. And I have become worried, just from, as Tracy said, we kind of keep the finger on the pulse because we have a very large online support group on Facebook, and then just talking with parents. I have become concerned that there is confusion between whether we call it trauma-informed parenting or attachment parenting and permissive parenting. And I go back to thinking a lot in our community. Revere Dr. Karen Purvis. She was the founder of TBRI, Trust-Based Relational Intervention. And we were fortunate to be able to interview her quite a few times on this podcast. And there's a misperception that TBRI, which is kind of often thought of as a foundation for trauma-informed parenting, that it means being permissive, not having boundaries. And what you are talking about is having firm, clear boundaries. And I think parents need to understand that that is the essence of being trauma-informed, I would say, but I would want you to actually weigh in on that. But how do we increase attachment, focus on attachment, recognize and work to heal trauma, and still be a balanced parent with boundaries and firm expectations?
First off, it is in one line, it is your attachment, and you're seeing someone as they deserve to be seen, not based on the behaviors that they are displaying in the moment, that positions you to give the boundaries, right? So what you may not know is that I also have this extensive toolkit, 300 films on how to integrate building resilience, trauma sensitive practices for professionals. And we are about to release a lot of information for foster resource and kinship families. So this is not a book I want you to buy. This is a book your agencies might buy, right? The parenting books are affordable. This may not be. So I am not suggesting this for you as individuals. We are going to figure out a way to get it to you. My problem, not yours. The reason I am holding it up is that Karen Purvis's ideas are in some of the chapters in the book because some of the people she worked with closely in Texas are authors in the book. I just want to put that out there.
Wonderful.
So I use the word trauma sensitive instead of trauma informed. I personally like trauma sensitive or trauma responsive better than informed because, as you know, words matter to me. And I don't care so much what you know, I care what you do. But, I can't speak to attachment parenting as a whole philosophy as when it's about what you do with your baby. What I can speak to is that it is human connection and attachment that gives you the permission to set the boundaries. These are completely linked, and trying to separate them is a serious mistake. Let me tell you what permissive parenting is. Permissive parenting is, I love you so much. I love spending time with you. I didn't have a good relationship with my dad. Think of me as a friend. Call me Ken. Now do what you want. That backfires because it creates anxiety and it brings a ginormous amount of judgment into the relationship. Listen to me. Think of me as your friend. Adolescents are always thinking, who am I? Am I normal? Do I fit in? They're always saying to the parents, why couldn't you be more like my friends? They're so cool and they don't judge me. Yes, they do. That is why adolescents are always living in absolute fear of losing their friends. We are better than friends. We are people who love unconditionally. That's what attachment is. That's what attachment is. Attachment is unconditional love, not friendship. Permissive parenting is trying to be a friend, and it backfires. Deep attachment says, I know who you are. I know all that is good and right about you. I'm not going anywhere. You can trust me. Now, let's go to trauma sensitive practices. This is my life on the professional side, is integrating these models. That's why I just held up that, 800-page book for you.
The tome.
It is my life. But what does it mean to be trauma sensitive? So I have a model, actually. I don't think you expected me to go here, but I'm going to go there. I have a model on what it means to be trauma sensitive. Number one, knowing what's about you and what's not about you. Because if you bring someone into your life who's deeply traumatized, there's going to be traumatic reenactments. Sometimes daggers are going to come towards you. And if you believe that that is actually about you, then you're going to become defensive, and that's going to make you offensive, and you're going to drive the young person away. When you understand, and then now you draw from the second principle, changing your lens from what's wrong with you to something happened to you. When you know that something happened to you, which is driving your behavior, even when you're receiving that behavior, you can remain stable and firm in your loving kindness. Now, let's go to the third principle. The third principle is seeing people as they deserve to be seen, as they really are, not based on a behavior they might be displaying in a moment, and not based on a label they may have ever received. If you're taking someone in at 12 and you get that file of all of these labels, I beg you to throw them away. And I beg you to actually give the child an opportunity to be authentically seen in all of their complexity, to understand that the behaviors that they're displaying do not represent them. You want to see and hear them, all of which we discussed before. By the way, that's how I define love. See someone as they deserve to be seen, as they really are, not based on a behavior they're displaying in the moment. The fourth, which we've also talked about, see, all this stuff goes together.
Yeah,
right?
It does.
Whether you're talking about parenting or professionals. The fourth is giving control to people from whom control has been taken away. And if you've been traumatized, your experience is not being able to have control over your life. So you put all of this together, you're going to have a firmer attachment. You're going to be trauma sensitive. And if we laid all of these principles on top of the stuff I say on parenting, it all matches.
Yeah. Balanced parenting, Lighthouse Parenting is trauma sensitive,
It's
responsive.
deeply trauma sensitive. And when I train professional development for organizations, I just came back late last night from doing a 2-day training in Maryland. And when I do that, I use the term adulting. What do we know from the
So do our teens.
literature
Right.
that really teaches us how to be the kind of adults that young people deserve in their lives? That's all I'm really trying to do. All I'm trying to do, whether it's the professional side or the parenting side, is to prepare adults to be the kind of people young people deserve in their lives.
Right.
That's what love is. They deserve to be loved.
Before we continue, did you know that we have a Weekend Wisdom podcast? Well, yes, we do. It is where we answer your questions. So we need you to send us your questions. It's fairly short, almost always less than 10 minutes. We take your question and we answer it. It can be done anonymously, or we can just use your first name. We don't care. Send us your questions to info@creatingafamily.org.
So we're going to move right into the self-care conversation that helps us be the reliable parents and caregivers our kids need us to be. Would you talk a little bit about some practical examples of how to implement that self-care on the daily and the weekly and the monthly for our parents and caregivers? Things like the love and friendships. Let's start there.
Yeah. Can we, with your permission, Tracy, take it up one level?
Yeah,
about what
absolutely.
It means to be reliable and what it means to be that light. The first is, I just want to underscore, you are reliable. You are that light when you know who your child really is. Because when your child is going through some really turbulent times, they're going to be looking back. You're their North Star or the lighthouse beacon, and you're like, I want to go back there. But what else makes you reliable? What else makes you reliable is that you have bandwidth, right?
Yeah.
Kids
Yep.
are not coming to you if you don't have bandwidth,
Yep.
they're going to be sparing you, which means you're not going to know when they need you the most.
Right.
Then you're going to find out when things are going badly and you're going to be hurt. And that's going to damage your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a rationale behind this. Now let's go to the details. How do we show that we are creating bandwidth? Part of how we're showing we have bandwidth is that you give me more information, I'm going to be okay because I'm going to draw support from friends, from family, maybe from a higher power, God, but I am going to draw support. I can make room on my plate for you. That is how much you can rely on me. And so you communicate that. And again, you do, no, I didn't say this yet. You don't have to always be talking this stuff to your kid. You don't have a sit down dinner and go, I choose to create bandwidth for you by having friendships.
Or tell your kids, by the way, I've got bandwidth. You know, come to me. I've got room for you. Yeah.
Right.
And they run the other direction.
Yeah.
Trust me, they're watching.
Yeah.
They're watching.
Right.
They know. And when they know that you have a bad day, they know that you do more than take a bubble bath. I'm very pro bubble bath. Nothing wrong with bubble baths. But it's more than that you go for human support, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know that. That means like, well, I really need my mom right now and she's really overwhelmed. I really need my dad, but I know that my dad's going to call his brother and that's all right.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're watching.
So love and friendships is that human support. Prioritizing sleep.
Yes. I am such a believer in that, but I have to admit, when my kids were young, that was what I chose to give up because I needed time alone.
Yeah, unfortunately, when we don't sleep adequately, we don't think properly.
Right.
When we don't sleep adequately, we can't regulate our emotions. Literally, sleep restores the part of our brain that modifies the lower part of the brain. The lower part of the brain is the emotional part, the volatility. The higher part of our brain is our thinking, our planning, and our mellowing out our emotions, which is a good thing. I want to feel everything, but I want to feel on good terms. Sleep gives you that ability. And if you're not sleeping, you're not restoring. And if you're raising your kids, it's important to know that they need sleep as well. So you might have a kid who believes that they should study into the middle of the night, but you can explain to them, actually, you can't solidify memories with a tired brain, and you can't draw from knowledge with an exhausted brain. So sleep is what allows you to learn, and sleep is what allows you to perform at your best. So it is never a good idea to do all-nighters or any of that. Never a good idea.
Now you tell me.
I was going to say the only all-nighters I ever did were for fun.
Well,
that might be for another conversation.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
And then you talk a little bit about exercise and movement, please.
Oh my gosh. So, the bottom line is that when we are stressed, our biology is informing us that we are stressed, right? So ever so briefly, why do you get butterflies when you're stressed? You get butterflies because stress is the signal that you should run, right? Run, get out of here, right? Or fight, right?
Yeah.
And so why do you get butterflies? You get butterflies because that is the blood leaving your belly to go to your jumping muscle, which we call our butt, and our legs, which are our running muscles. That's literally what butterflies are. You get stressed and then the blood goes whoosh, so you can run. That's the single coolest medical fact I know. And so we are designed to be able to adapt our bodies to stress. Now, what else happens during stress? You can't think clearly, because if it's a tiger that's about to attack you, you're not supposed to say to the tiger, like, Hey, let's work it out. And you also can't feel fully because you're not supposed to say to the tiger, help me understand why you want to eat me. Hear me clearly. You can't think and you can't feel when you're optimally stressed because you are being driven by the hormone adrenaline, right? And therefore, you cannot draw from the two most important things of human resilience, being able to deal with our emotions and to think. So why does exercise matter so much? You are listening to your body. If your body's going, run, when you exercise, you're using up your hormones. You're communicating your body. I've outrun the wolf pack. I've outrun the tiger. I'm cool. I can think, I can feel, right? So exercise really has a very, very biological role.
Let me pause here to thank the Jockey Being Family Foundation. We could not do what we do without their support, but specifically for this podcast, they have been with us for a very long time, and we are truly appreciative of their support. And it's through their support that we bring you, I think it's 15 free courses. If you need CE, you can get CE with these courses. If you don't need CE and just want to be a better parent or caregiver, they are terrific. They're really geared more for those of you who are actively parenting. You can find them at bit.ly/JBF support. That's bit.ly/JBF support. And now back to the show. Well, Dr. Ginsburg, we always try to end on some practical tips. Now, let me be honest. Your book is full of practical tips.
Yeah.
So our first recommendation is to go out and buy the book, Lighthouse Parenting. Tracy, if you have the book, hold it up for our YouTube viewers. Yes, you can see the book. And I would also throw it out there that we have interviewed Dr. Ginsburg on a number of occasions. We love his books. I would also send you to the Center for Parent and Teen Communication. They have lots and lots of tips there. And I can attest to the fact that Tracy and I have both utilized that website personally in our parenting. So I strongly recommend. What we're going to do here is just going to be a tip of the iceberg. Continuing the metaphor that you're going with waves and lighthouse or whatever. This is a cold lighthouse out in the Arctic. But now, if we could hit on just a few tips, and I think we do need to divide by age because we all know that it's different. So we're talking about lighthouse parenting or balanced parenting, authoritative parenting. There's so many different things, but I really like the analogy of lighthouse parenting. So for elementary aged kids, our toddlers up to elementary age, if you could just throw out one or two practical things that parents can do, and then move into our elementary age, practical things you would want parents to know if they want to adjust their parenting to be more of a lighthouse parent.
So we're all setting the stage for raising a good person, strengthening a family, and having an enduring bond. That's the subtitle of the book. The secret to knowing what books are about sometimes, and with mine is always looking at the subtitle.
I agree, actually.
So let's think about that. During the toddler years, our children need to know that they are protected, that we are watching out for them. We are setting the stage for them to see that we protect them. We're also paying a tremendous amount of attention when they're 3, 4, and 5 years old to really seeing the core elements of their character, right? Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, I knew that my daughters were like essentially healers and protectors when they were 3 years old, when they were like walking bugs outside to be with their bug grandmas, right? Their generosity, their sense of fairness. You really get to know your child very, very early. During the elementary school years, you're continuing to get to know them, but you are setting the stage for them to see you as someone who will give them protective boundaries and stretch those boundaries. These are the years where they're so excited about potentially growing up, but they don't have any battles with you over control. So you set the stage where they understand your goal is for them to stretch into new territory, for them to have new boundaries when they can handle them. Toxic word in human communication, no. Good sentence, not yet. Show me what you can handle, we'll get there. You set that stage during the elementary school years. So they think, how cool that my parents want me to grow up, but that they're protecting me while I'm doing it. And all that I have to do is demonstrate responsibility. And then I get to stretch. Do that during the elementary years. During the teen years, you have this natural give and take between them thinking, I really don't need you at all, right? But what they really mean is, I love you so much it hurts. I can't imagine being independent without you, right? So I'm going to pretend for this period of time that I don't need you. So during this period of time, you are largely a sounding board and always available, right? You've set the stage during the early years. That's what Lighthouse Parenting is, by the way. Lighthouse Parenting is designed for, Lighthouse Parenting is for your entire life. The book, Lighthouse Parenting, is designed for the parent of maybe the 7 to 12-year-old. And then the book, Congrats, You're Having a Teen, which is a book that came out a couple of years ago, is designed to take Lighthouse Parenting through the teen years. But you begin changing. You are more of someone who's a sounding board when they need a sounding board and ready to cuddle when they need a hug, right? But you're taking the cues from them during the adolescent years. During the young adult years is when they should be standing on their own somewhat. But I beg every parent out there to understand there is nothing magic about the age of 18.
Right.
It is not biologic. It is not neurologic. Brain science does not say that the age 18 is magic. It is that some people decided that that would be the legal age of adulthood. Right. So our relationship continues forever, God willing, right? But during the young adult years is when you give them certainly more freedom to make decisions. Gosh, they're probably not living with you, right? And if they are, then you should still give them more freedoms. But you remind them, you don't have to be done cooking, right? Life is a journey. And this horrible thing happens to you in junior year of high school, where you think you have to write an essay and put it all together in order to apply for college. Just unfair to human beings. Life is a journey. Life is a journey. And by reinforcing for our young adults that we can remake ourselves, we can rethink, you don't have to be done. And by the way, I'm always here as a sounding board for you. Because, closing thought, the book ends, Lighthouse Parenting ends. I think all my books end, actually, with the concept of interdependence as the goal, right? This is what we want. Families that belong together across the generations. That's the way in which humans thrive. And the way to get there, the way to get to interdependence, where we rely and belong on each other, is to honor independence during adolescence. When we are the wind behind their sails, they get them to understand they can stand on their own feet. You're not going to interfere with that. You're always going to support them. And once they are confidently standing on their own feet, they choose interdependence. That is a choice. And how you play adolescence and childhood determines or largely determines what choice they're going to make.
That's fantastic. And how each of them, I've got 6 kids, so I'm watching how each of them are coming back to that level of interdependence, and it's playing out so differently in each of the adult children. And it just reminds me how true it is to how they were at 2 and 3 years old. It's kind of like a boomerang. It goes out and it comes back, and how they're interdependent with us now is quite similar to how they behaved and tried to gain that independence at 2 and 3.
A lot of wisdom there. This is what I mean by knowing your kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We are so appreciative of your time and your expertise and your very practical wisdom. And we hope that we get to work together again in the future.
I will genuinely look forward to it. And Dawn, thank you for everything you've done, not just for this podcast and for the organization, but for humanity by focusing on families.
Thank you so
Amen.
much for your kind words. It means a lot, especially coming from you. Thank you.